Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Hard 100, a video series documenting the culling of my collection from what it is to what it's going to be, and that is a Hard 100 games. Ladies and gentlemen, close your eyes. Not if you're driving. If you're driving, don't close your eyes, but also if you're driving, why are you watching the video? I want you to imagine your top 3 worker placement games. You done that? All right, cool. So, you don't know, you might have your Stone Age, you might have your Dungeon Pets, you might have your Champions of Midgard, you might have your Kalis. Whatever your top 3 are, I want you to think about it. Now I want you to think of which one of those 3 favorite games you're going to throw over the cliff Spartan style, because one of them is about to get replaced. Ladies and gentlemen, Underwater Cities. Underwater Cities by Vladimir Suki, or Suchi, or Suki, I forget how he asked us to pronounce it, is a game in which you or a handful of players are building up your underwater cities BioShock style. Now this is by a designer that I absolutely love. He has made one of my all-time favorite games, Last Will. Mwah! I love it. This box has seen some better days. I love the designer. He always manages to take a standard idea of a game and a theme and kind of turn it on its head and get it the best it can possibly be. He also made a game called Pulsar something, and I think he did Prodigal Sons too. I haven't had a chance to play those, but I'm excited to. He is phenomenal. This game is also phenomenal. This is your standard worker placement game in which you take your worker, in this case some weird rectangle token, which I think is supposed to show you as a submarine? I don't know. You place it on the space and you all together now do that thing. Now the thing that you do is different based on where you put it. All of them are going to be some version of getting resources to build tunnels or structures or cities to get points. Now, if that was any other worker placement game, we'd be done. But no, Mr. Suki here is a step above. And what you're doing is you have a handful of cards. And I hear this is very Terraforming Marsy, but don't care about that game. Haven't played it. Looks boring as shit. This one does not, and it's awesome. On these cards are going to be just a ton of actions split across 3 eras. So there's not going to be very much overlap in these cards, but they're all going to be versions of an idea. Either getting a thing to build a thing, or building a thing to get a thing. In standard traffic light fashion, there is a red, yellow, and green. And on your turn, you have to play a card. If that card matches the color of the space you put your little worker, not only do you get to do the action on the space, you get to do the action on the card. You can go in any order, but you can't jump back and forth. You have to do all of one, then all of the other. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is where the game is. You have to figure out what card to play in order to maximize everything that you're doing. But here's the problem. You only have 3 cards in your hand. At the beginning of your turn, and at the beginning of your turn, you discard down to 3. But if you want to play a red space, and you don't have a red card, you still have to play that card, but that card goes to the great whatever in the sky where dead cards go. I don't know, all dogs go to heaven. And in a wonderful bit of balancing, the weakest space on the board is home to the strongest cards on the board. So for example, the green spaces at the bottom are home to the weakest spaces to put your worker, but they have the strongest cards, and then the other one vice versa. Or vice versa. It's very well thought out and very well done. The game goes 16 rounds, or however many rounds. It's 4 rounds, then a production, then rounds, then a production, then rounds, and a production. After every production, you swap out the deck with the next era, and things escalate quickly. Every production phase is basically Christmas, and you get just tons and tons of resources. The first few turns, you're kind of struggling, like, oh, I need this. It's like pulling teeth to get kelp and money. You're saying, oh, I need it all. So you find yourself trying to repeat the same things over and over to try to get some kind of engine going. But then when that sweet, sweet harvest happens, you get all of these resources and you're drowning in riches. Depending on what you have built will give you a certain number of resources, and there's a very, oh my god, what is this player aid that is actually very, very well thought out once you get it done. So you have all those resources, and that allows you to build things and upgrade things. You can either build a regular city or a symbiotic city, and the rulebook goes to great lengths to describe everything and how everything goes. Rulebook is really good, but I would expect nothing less considering his last one was also very, very good. Let's do let's do some housekeeping. 1 to 4 players. I have played it solo, and I have played it with 2 players. I haven't played it higher than that. Playing solo is pretty good. They do a good job of blocking off spaces, and you know what spaces are going to be blocked off. And there's also a little cell phone on the board that determines player order each turn, and the more of that you go up on, you'll also get additional bonuses. And if you don't touch it at all in a solo game, additional spaces get blocked off. So even in a solo, when you go first every time, you can't ignore it. 40 minutes per player, and ages 14 and up. We got through a learning game in about an hour and a half. And that hour and a half flew by. It was very, very quick. You only have 3 workers, so every turn flew by. This, pull. This, pull. This, pull. Harvest. Production. Whoa, where'd the time go? I don't have a lot of complaints when it comes to gameplay. There was some confusion on my part at the beginning. When you play a card that matches the color, it goes on your board. There's different types. There are the ones that happen immediately. There are ones that you put down that'll happen for production. Then there are your action cards, of which you can only have 4. There's a space on the board that allows you to trigger an action. I thought the space on the board had to match the color of the action you triggered, but that's not the case. The game's not that mean. So that's the only thing that was kind of, okay. As far as gameplay goes, my criticisms, it's a lot to figure out. But once you figure it out, you got it, and you don't need to relearn. I can play this game again right now. I may have to scan the rule book real quick, but it's very intuitive once you know what you're doing. All you're doing is on your turn, putting a worker down, playing a card. If they match, you get to do both of them. If they don't, you can only do one of them. Moving on. And the iconography is very good. It makes a lot of sense. It is a lot of icons you have to figure out. Not quite Race for the Galaxy kind of icons, but enough. My only problem with the game comes from the production. We are living in the golden age, I would say the platinum age of board games. We have games that are production to death, with everything being wooden, to 3D trees on a board, to thick, beautiful tiles, to everything carved and modeled in plastic. And then Rio Grande, which I hear is just the American publisher, went and gave me player aids and player boards that are basically notebook paper. The tiles are very thin. I question the lastability of this game after multiple plays. My player board kind of warped a little bit, and you're required to stack the little discs on top of each other to show that it's an upgraded facility, but they kept falling off to the point where I just left them over. I know there's something online I can order that'll kind of help all that out, but after a game like Last Will, with the components being wonderful by the designer, why did we leave Czech Games Edition? Because they know how to put the money into a game. But really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how beautiful your game is. If the gameplay is meh, no one cares. And it also doesn't matter how terrible your components are. Because at the end of the day, if your game is wonderful, the game is wonderful. Underwater Cities, phenomenal worker placement game. It's so good, it triggers the right parts of my brain. It's difficult. It's easy to teach, oddly enough. It's easy to play. Those minutes fly by. And once you really get into the swing of things, the game is over before you know it. It is a worker placement game to end most worker placement games. If you have your favorite, you have your favorite. Like I mentioned, have you figured out which one of your top 3 this one's going to replace? Because it's replaced some for me. Ladies and gentlemen, Underwater Cities in my hard 100. It is perfect for my shelf. If you can find yourself a copy, a little heavy, it is perfect for yours if you want a big, meaty, chunky worker placement game, plus a little bit extra. There's all kinds of things that score at the end of the game. There are cards on the table. You can get your own personal scoring conditions to help at the end. What's also really nice is the placement of your facilities on your board also triggers certain things that will give you more points at the end of the game, or more stuff during the game. You have to make that decision for your own. Player boards are asymmetrical too. You can play with the regular side and the other side. There it goes. Underwater Cities under a pod racer. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me on the latest edition of the Hard 100. This game is so good. Go play it. Go buy it. You'll figure it out on your own, and it's just wonderful. Peace out.